In the remote and secluded town of Deathwood, hidden deep within a forgotten forest, life moved slowly. For generations, the people of Deathwood lived in quiet isolation, their routines untouched by the modern world. The ancient forest that surrounded the town had long been a source of eerie tales, stories of creatures lurking in the dark, voices whispering in the wind, and inexplicable shadows that moved without cause. To the townsfolk, deeply superstitious, lived in fear of the forest depths, and few dared to wander too far from the safety of their homes. Rajesh Thakur, however, had never been one to subscribe to superstition. While others avoided the forest and its unknown secrets, Rajesh embraced them. He was a man of science, a reclusive genius who had moved to Deathwood seeking solitude for his work. Unlike the rest of the townspeople, Rajesh was fascinated by the unknown, not the kind found in ghost stories, but the vast, limitless unknown that stretched out beyond the stars. Rajesh's house sat on a hill at the edge of town, overlooking the dense expanse of forest. It was an old, creaking house, weathered by years of neglect, but Rajesh had transformed it into a laboratory of sorts, filled with computer equipment, satellite receivers, and strange devices of his own invention. He was an astrophysicist, an amateur astronomer, and more recently, a hacker of extraordinary skill. He had managed to access a satellite system used by space agencies and modified it for his own experiments. For years, Rajesh had been working on a project he kept secret from everyone. He was attempting to communicate with extraterrestrial life, convinced that there was more out there than humanity had yet discovered. He spent countless hours at his desk, coding and sending signals into the cosmos, hoping for a reply. The people of Deathwood knew him only as the town's strange recluse, never imagining the scope of his work. They didn't care for technology or Rajesh's eccentric behavior. He was just another part of the forest's strange allure. One night, as a cold wind howled outside his window and the moon hung low in the sky, Rajesh was hunched over his laptop, his fingers flying over the keyboard. His program was running, sending out pulses of light through a satellite he had hacked. For months he had sent these signals with no response, but something felt different about tonight. The air seemed heavy, charged with an energy he couldn't explain. Rajesh glanced up at his computer screen. The data streaming back was unlike anything he had ever seen. At first it was nothing but static, garbled noise that meant little. But then it shifted. The signal began to form into something coherent in alien language, mathematical and precise. Rajesh's breath caught in his throat. He had made contact. The signal was powerful, and as Rajesh decoded it, he realized it was a set of coordinates for Earth. But there was more, a message, a warning that he couldn't fully understand. His heart pounded in his chest as he stared at the screen, his mind racing. The aliens were not merely responding, they were coming. His fingers trembled as he quickly typed commands, trying to send a response, to shut down the signal before it was too late. But the connection was strong, too strong. His equipment began to flicker, and the power in his house surged, the lights dimming and brightening erratically. The ground beneath him vibrated softly, and outside the wind seemed to howl louder. Suddenly the power in his house went out. The darkness was complete, and Rajesh could feel the hum-in of something unnatural in the air. Grabbing a flashlight, he made his way outside to check the generator, the only source of power for his isolated home. As he opened the door, he stopped short. The sky above had changed. Where once there had been a clear night, now there was only a dense, rolling blackness. Stars were gone, swallowed by a thick, dark cloud that seemed to pulse with energy. The air was heavy, and Rajesh felt a shiver run down his spine. He had never seen anything like it. Panic gripped him as he realized the full extent of what he had done. Without thinking, Rajesh jumped into his old car, the engine roaring to life as he sped down the narrow road that wound through the forest. He had to warn someone, had to get help. But just as he rounded the first bend, a brilliant flash of light appeared in front of him. Blinded, he slammed on the brakes, but the car skidded out of control, veering off the road and plunging into the ravine below. The crash was violent. Metal twisted and glass shattered as the car tumbled down the hill, finally coming to rest at the bottom. Rajesh Thakur was dead, his body limp against the steering wheel. His laptop, still running the program that had sent the signal, sat glowing faintly in the passenger seat. Days passed, and the town of Deathwood found itself enveloped in an unnatural darkness. The sun, which had always risen brightly over the forest, now seemed dim and distant. A heavy, oppressive cloud cover had settled over Rajesh's house, blocking out the light. The people of the town were unnerved, their superstitions bubbling to the surface as they whispered about the curse that had fallen upon them. Strange things began to happen. At night, the sky would fill with strange, shifting lights that moved in patterns too deliberate to be natural. A deep, resonant hum could be heard, sometimes shaking the very ground beneath the town. Animals fled the area, their instincts warning them of danger that humans could not yet perceive. But it was the darkness that was most unsettling. The blackout above Rajesh's house began to spread, casting a long, deep shadow over the town. It wasn't just the absence of light, it was something more, something alive. People could feel it pressing down on them, suffocating them with its weight. The townspeople began to grow restless, their fear turning into paranoia. They locked their doors and avoided the forest, convinced that something terrible was lurking within. It wasn't long before the authorities took notice. Government agents arrived, setting up a perimeter around Rajesh's house. Scientists and soldiers alike moved in, trying to understand the strange phenomena plaguing the area, but no one had any answers. The darkness persisted, defying all explanation. Then, one night, the sky itself changed. A massive ship appeared over Deathwood, descending slowly from the heavens. It was unlike anything humanity had ever seen, vast, pulsating with an eerie, ethereal light. It was as though the stars themselves had rearranged to form this ship, a living entity made of energy and matter that defied comprehension. The people of Deathwood watched in terror as the ship hovered silently above the forest, casting a shadow so deep that the town was plunged into total darkness. The ship was alive, and inside the Alaskatal, a species of advanced, energy-based beings watched Earth with cold, calculating eyes. They had been summoned by Rajesh's signal, an unintended invitation that had drawn them across galaxies. They were explorers, yes, but also conquerors. The Alaskatal were beings of pure energy, their bodies sustained by sunlight, their purpose inscrutable to the human mind. As the ship descended, the Alaskatal began their observation of Earth. They could sense the fear emanating from the town, the panic spreading among the people. To them, this was not a cause for concern. It was merely a side effect of their presence. They did not come to conquer, not immediately, but to study, to assess. The Alaskatal ship remained above Deathwood for days, casting a deep shadow over the town, its inhabitants growing more fearful by the hour. But there was one among them who did not share in the terror, one who was curious instead of afraid. Rohit Singh, a young man known for his adventurous spirit and insatiable curiosity, had always been drawn to the unknown. While the rest of the town cowered in fear, Rohit felt a strange pull toward the darkness. He had always been fascinated by space, by the stars, and by the possibility that there was more out there than humanity could understand. Now, with the arrival of the Alaskatal, his fascination became an obsession. One night, while the town slept fitfully under the oppressive darkness, Rohit slipped out of his house and made his way into the forest toward Rajesh's old home. The air was thick with an unnatural energy, and as Rohit walked, he could feel the hairs on his arms standing on end. The forest seemed alive in a way it hadn't before, the trees swaying as if in response to some unseen force. When he arrived at Rajesh's house, he saw it, the alien ship, hovering low in the sky, its massive form casting an inky shadow across the landscape. But there was something else too, a figure moving slowly through the darkness, as if exploring the world around it. It was one of the Alaskatal. The being was smaller than Rohit had imagined, its body glowing faintly with a soft golden light. It moved with a strange grace, its form shifting and undulating like liquid energy. Rohit's heart raced, but not with fear. He felt an overwhelming sense of awe as he watched the creature, its translucent form shimmering in the dim light. The Alaskatal, sensing Rohit's presence, turned to face him. For a moment, the two stared at each other, neither moving. Rohit could feel something, a connection, a shared understanding that transcended words. The alien was not here to harm him. It was alone, curious, and perhaps even afraid. Slowly, Rohit stepped forward, extending a hand in a gesture of peace. The Alaskatal responded in kind. It reached out, its hand hovering just above Rohit's. When their hands met, a surge of warmth passed between them, a wave of energy that flowed from the alien into Rohit's body. It was an indescribable sensation, pure light, pure power coursing through his veins. The connection was instant. The Alaskatal, whose name was Zirek, communicated without words, sending images and feelings into Rohit's mind. Through these impressions, Rohit learned that Zirek had chosen to remain on Earth, while the rest of the Alaskatal observed from their ship. Zirek was different, curious about Earth, about humans, about the sunlight that gave life to this planet. He was young, by Alaskatal standards, and eager to explore a world so unlike his own. Over the next few days, Rohit and Zirek formed an unlikely bond. They met in secret, deep in the forest where no one would disturb them. Zirek, who could absorb sunlight and convert it into energy, demonstrated his incredible abilities to Rohit. He could manipulate light, bend it to his will, and even create temporary pockets of daylight in the deepest shadows. Rowett watched in awe as Zirek transformed the forest around them into a place of magic, the trees glowing softly as they bathed in the alien's light. But there was more to Zirek than just his powers. He was fascinated by Rowett's world, by the complexity of human life, by emotions and experiences that were foreign to the Alaska Tau. And in return, Rowett learned more about Zirek's kind, their advanced technology, and their dependence on sunlight for survival. One afternoon, as they sat in a clearing, Zirek revealed something extraordinary. He stood in the full light of the sun, his body glowing brighter and brighter as he absorbed the energy. Then, with a simple gesture, he transferred some of that energy to Rowett. Rowett felt the change immediately. A warmth spread through him, and he realized he could feel the sun in a way he never had before. It was as if the sunlight itself had become a part of him, its energy flowing through his body, giving him strength. Zirek had shared his power with Rowett, and with it, Rowett gained abilities he had never imagined possible. Over the next few days, Rowett experimented with his new powers, marveling at the way he could now channel the energy of the sun. He could heal small wounds, move objects with a thought, and even manipulate the light around him to create illusions. With this new power came a heavy responsibility, and Rowett knew that he couldn't keep it hidden forever. The situation in Deathwood was growing more dire. The government had taken a keen interest in the strange phenomena surrounding Rajesh's house, and soldiers and scientists were setting up camp, determined to uncover the truth. Rumors of the alien presence had begun to spread, and the people of the town were growing more fearful by the day. Rowett realized that Zirek was in danger. If the government found out about the alien, they would undoubtedly see him as a threat. They would capture Zirek, study him, and use his powers for their own purposes. Rowett couldn't let that happen. He had to protect his friend. One night, as the government forces prepared to launch a full investigation into the strange happenings in Deathwood, Rowett and Zirek met for what they both knew might be the last time. The alien ship had returned, hovering silently above the forest, its presence once again plunging the town into darkness. Zirek could sense it was time to leave. His people had come to retrieve him, and he could not stay on Earth forever. But before he left, Zirek made one final gift to Rowett. He placed his glowing hand on Rowett's chest, and in that moment Rowett felt a surge of energy unlike anything he had ever experienced. It was as if the sun itself had come alive inside him, its warmth and light flooding his entire being. Zirek was giving Rowett the last of his power, entrusting him with the ability to harness the sun's energy. As the alien ship descended, ready to take Zirek back to the stars, Rowett knew that this was goodbye. The Alaska Tall ship hovered above the clearing, its lights pulsing softly. Zirek turned to Rowett one last time, his golden form shimmering in the darkness. Then, with a final flash of light, the alien ascended into the ship, and it disappeared into the sky. Months passed, and the darkness that had once covered Deathwood lifted. The people of the town slowly returned to their normal lives, though the events that had transpired would never be forgotten. The government's investigation yielded no concrete answers, and eventually, they left the town, leaving behind only whispered rumors and lingering fears. But Rowett knew the truth. He had been forever changed by his encounter with Zirek. The power of the sun still flowed through him, a gift from a friend who had come from the stars. Whenever he stood in the sunlight, he could feel the warmth, the energy, and the connection to something far greater than himself. He had become the guardian of a secret that no one else could ever understand, a connection to a world beyond Earth, to beings of light and energy who had seen the universe in ways humans could only dream of. As Rowett walked through the forest, the sunlight filtering through the trees, he knew that his life would never be the same. He was a part of something bigger now, something extraordinary. The darkness had lifted, but the light remained. And in the heart of Deathwood, Rowett stood as a beacon of that light, a symbol of hope, of friendship, and of the boundless mysteries that still waited to be discovered beyond the stars.